Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Hey guys, Jim here. Welcome. And once again, today we're going to be taking a look at the newest offering from Jack Wolf Knives, their newest slip joint called the Feelgood Jack. And as we zoom out from the boobages there, get that out of the way, we'll talk about this knife in a little greater detail than I did in the unboxing, which I uploaded last week. Today is actually the drop day for these. So these are available as of right now. You can go to jackwolfknives.com and go to their authorized dealer page, and it will link you to all the various dealers that are authorized to carry their products, and they're all dropping at the same time today. So I'm excited to be out here with this, as I always am, because Jack Wolf Knives kick ass. Now this one is not my most favorite out of the 6 that I have. I still maintain that it's tied up for number 1 is between the Cyborg and the Vampire. The new Big Bro that came out last month has gotten a lot of pocket time and a lot of use. Love my Javelina Jack. Love the low drag, because the low drag was the first introduction that I had into Jack Wolf Knives, and that also holds a special place in my heart. This one is quite a bit different. I've been wanting one of the Wharncliffe or Sheep's Foot, actually, variations of the Jack Wolf Knives for quite a while, and I'm really glad to see that he put another one out here. However, this one is significantly slimmer on the blade and the entire knife than the previous iterations. And I think it's a smart move for Benjamin to make, because this gives you something entirely different in the hand than all of the other knives. If you're a massive collector and you've got all of them, this is going to earn its place in your collection because it is that much different. And if it's your first foray into Jack Wolf Knives, and you were looking for a small, very easy to carry slip joint, this is going to be a wonderful way to introduce you into his knives as well. And you've got lots of room to grab onto that blade. So it's got some unique features that make it stand out from all of the rest. And I think for that reason, a lot of people are going to be jumping in on this. It's a cool knife. It is gorgeous. And it follows the theme that Ben has been working so hard on, which is to take classic designs, classic patterns, and modernize them for today's collectors that may not typically have an interest in slip joint knives or the style of knives that are made into slip joints. Because there are very particular patterns, there are very particular blade shapes and everything else that go into a lot of classic slip joints, and maybe you don't mind the idea of a slip joint, but you just don't like the designs, the styles of them. Or you don't mind a slip joint, but you're really more of a modern knife collector, and they're not really your thing with, stag and antler and brass and all kinds of stuff that just really don't appeal to you. Here, you've got solid titanium with very, very nicely done fat carbon covers. This is the, oh my goodness, White Storm White Storm is what they're calling it. I kept wanting to call it Arctic Storm, but it's Fat Carbon White Storm. You've got the triple line double bolster, and then you've got the scallops here. One of the features of a doctor's knife, which is the pattern that this is the fact that it will stand up on end because it has a square butt. Not that that's actually going to do anything for you. There's no practical purpose really to ever stand your knife up unless you just like living life on the edge, man, and danger is your middle name because you're always going to have that blade sticking up. Hey, man, whatever. That's up to you. Anyway, so ergonomically, this is fantastically different than all of the rest. And I'll show you some side-by-side comparisons of them in just a few minutes. We'll break down the packaging as always. First off, this is going to be your tin, where it's marked as Feelgood Jack. You've got the nurse with the fairly decent-sized boobies. You've got Jack over there sitting on the patient bed there. All the artwork is done by Sean Tiffany, very, very talented cartoon artist. And I repacked this since the unboxing because I don't know what it is about how they pack these tubes. But no matter what happens, the very first time you open it, the pog jumps out. It jumps out and flies out, and you got to go chasing it. So there is the pog that you received, the commemorative Jack Wolf Knives pog with the matching artwork. You'll also get a sticker inside, as you see stuffed in the corner there, and the microfiber cleaning cloth, which I use the hell out of these things. These are really, really nice microfiber cloths. And still the thing that I feel is probably the most important part of the packaging is going to be the pocket slip so that you have somewhere to safely stick your knife so you can drop it in your pocket. If you're dropping it in a pocket that has car keys or things like that, they're unlikely to ever scratch up your knife. And if you're like me, when I carry my folders, I don't ever carry anything else in that pocket, ever, because I don't want to bang up, scratch up knives or whatever that they're going to get normal use but don't need to have abusive wear and tear on them. So I don't carry car keys or change or anything in the pocket with my knife. But I will drop a Jack Wolf in there with it because it's being covered by the leather slipcase. So let's give you a couple of size comparisons here, and then we'll get into the TLDW, and then we'll get into the specs and all that good stuff. Put it up against the low drag. And it is just a little bit longer than the low drag. Bring out the javelina. Now it is nearly identical in size, overall length to the javelina. Bring out the big bro. I am loving the shit out of the big bro. I absolutely love this knife. That was April's drop just last month. Cyborg Jack, smallest of all the jacks that I've got. And my beloved Vampire Jack. Now, if we get a couple of these out of the way, I want to put the Vampire right up against it because they are virtually identical in their length. However, the way that they sit in your hand and the way they carry is entirely different because you've got a very wide body on this frame and you've got a pretty decent blade height on there as well, whereas this is significantly slimmer. I don't want to be pressing on that too hard because all of these are deep hollow ground and very, 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 very sharp. And that's why I end up using them as much as I do because they cut things effortlessly. It really doesn't matter what I've got to do if I'm cutting down a cardboard box for recycling or I'm cutting into packages or anything like that. These just slice everything so wonderfully because of these very, very fine hollow grinds that are done. They do a really excellent job on their bevels. Super, super work on these. And the fact that you're getting these for $300 using such high-grade materials, these covers, or what we would normally refer to as scales, are not cheap, man. They are not cheap at all. I love the fact that you've got a lot of variety and a lot of color choices and everything else, but the overall quality of the fat carbon is just fantastic. I've worked with a lot of fat carbon making the knives that I make, and it's a material that's easy to work with, and it finishes very, very well. And I love when you begin to contour them, the way it changes the pattern. It brings out more colors and more of the pattern, especially if you look at this one here. Once this has been contoured, now it's breaking up and it's bringing out more of the white in this red, white, and blue pattern. Really looks good as it's contoured. Low Drag has the 80s carbon fiber. I'm sorry, not the 80s, the Miami, my apologies. The 80s is significantly different, much more vividly colored. This is the lava flow. Put these off to the side here. Now, one of the things that you'll notice as I'm closing these is the walk and talk is a little bit different on this knife. It's not as loud. It's not as much of a punctuation as the other ones are. Another thing that I really like is the fact that, let's just go ahead and get into the TLDW. Because in the TLDW, I break down the pros and cons, and I don't have to be redundant. So, TLDW, too long, didn't watch. I'm doing this at like 8 minutes into the video. Whatever, that's okay. All right, let's get this bad boy back open. First thing, pros. Ben's usual keen eye for style in modernizing a classic design. Again, he's done a great job of making sure he's paying homage to this classic pattern while making it distinct and different. Because a typical doctor's knife is going to actually have two blades. One that's a knife blade and one that's more of like almost like a steel tongue depressor. It has no edge, it has no point. And whether it's sharing the same pivot or it's coming off the backside, most doctor style knives appear to be two blade design. And this is a single blade because so far that's all that Ben has made are single blade knives. And I'm happy for that. I don't know if I would really be a fan of multi-blade. I'm sure of course it's very, very useful, but I don't know that I really have a need for that. But who knows? He may have one in the plans and it'll come out and it'll be typical awesome Ben styling and it may change my mind. As we all know, the brand has actually changed my mind entirely about slip joints in general. By the way, there's another big pro, S90V. Instead of using M390 like almost everybody else does, and like the first couple of Jack Wolf knives were, he made the switch over to S90V back with the low drag. And I gotta tell you, it's a really great choice. The edge lasts seemingly forever. It's a long time before you're gonna really need to strop it. Certainly a long time before you're going to need to resharpen it, and you do have a significant sharpening choil there if you do need to ever resharpen them. He's pretty much thought of everything. Another pro for a lot of people is going to be this sleek, slim, slender profile overall. It's going to be more compact, probably a lot easier to carry for a lot of people, especially if you're not the type to use a slip. All the slips are the same size, so your pocket won't know the difference between a Vampire Jack, a Big Bro Jack, or this. But the knife itself is much slimmer, much more slender, and I believe it's actually lighter in weight. I'd have to go back to my previous videos or just sit here and weigh them to see what the weight differences are. So I'll bring out the scale here in a few minutes and do that. And another pro for me is it is the perfect blade shape for getting a nice pinch grip on and cutting open packages. A lot of times, you know, I'm a suburban kind of guy. I'm not an outdoor, you know, woodsy camping style kind of dude. I don't do a lot of food prep and stuff with pocket knives. So for me, the most common use for a knife is going to be opening up packages and cutting down the packages when I'm all done. And this, having that defined tip right there with a tip that's below the pivot, makes it much easier to be able to do that. So this is going to be excellent for the things that I'm going to want it for the most. Now, the cons. For a lot of people that have very large hands, this might feel a little bit too skinny. It might not feel substantial enough for you. You're going to think, well, I can't get a good grip on it. It feels like it might be a little bit delicate in some fashion. And while I don't think it's actually delicate, it's probably not going to have the same degree of strength, you know, that some of the broader, wider knives are going to have. But yeah, if you've got really big hands, this might be the one to pass on. If you're hopelessly addicted to Jack Wolf knives and you're like, man, I need another break. I need another month because it was 1 month he didn't do a drop. I need one more month just so I can get some money back in the bank so I can keep investing in the hobby. This might be the month that you pass. Only if you have really, really large hands, this might feel a little bit like you're holding a skewer or something in your hand, something very, very skinny and slim. Now, it's going to be a pro for a lot of people that it's skinny and slim, and it's going to fit their hand very, very well. It's going to be lightweight. It's going to be easy to carry. But so that's one of the things that can go either way. And another con is I can't get the friggin' Motley Crue song out of my damn head. Every time I look at this knife or I look at the packaging or I'm thinking about the knife, the name pops in my head and then the friggin' song burrows its way into my brain and I can't get rid of it for hours. So there's that. And that may be a con that nobody else but me is going to ever have to deal with. But it's real. It's genuine. It's there. TLDW over with. Let's get into the specifications, shall we, gentlemen? First off, we're looking at a doctor's knife pattern, as I mentioned earlier. The covers are Fat Carbon White Storm. And of course, as always, you have the integral bolsters and liners, which are 6AL4V bead blasted titanium. Hardware is all titanium polished, and they are Torx pattern. And you have the S90V steel, as I mentioned earlier. The close length, 3 3/4 inches close length. And the blade length is 3 inches. A good, useful size blade length, especially for a slip joint, to be sure. And the cutting edge is 2 3/4 inches. So there are all your specs out of the way, and my personal feelings on the knife overall. I think I mainly summed those up in the beginning of the video. I really do like the knife because it's typical Jack Wolf Knives quality. Again, as I mentioned in the unboxing, one of the things that Jack Wolf Knives are known for is the quality of the fitment, especially with the back spring. So in the closed position, it is completely seamless. I do want to get a close-up here of that. It is completely seamless. In the half-stop position, also seamless. It is not sitting out proud. And then in the open position, it is also seamless. So as always, fit and finish is just damn perfect. I have yet to receive a Jack Wolf that had any issues or any imperfections, whether it be in the build, in the fitment of the components, materials I should say, or in the finishing. Everything has always just been amazing, and they've all been very, very sharp out of the box. And for those of you that collect a lot of knives and have been doing this for a long time, you know that it is fairly common to buy production grade knives that end up not being all that sharp, or not as sharp as you expect them to be. And with the Jack Wolf knives, every single one has been scary sharp, ridiculously sharp. And that's another reason why I use them as often as I do. The edges are just friggin' fantastic. And they cut everything that I want them to cut. Now, as I also mentioned in the unboxing video, because of the thickness and the height of this particular blade, this is not the one that I'd be pushing up under zip ties and cutting them, cranking them out, and putting a lot of torque and everything into them. Probably not the best to do with a hollow ground blade that goes down this thin anyway. I don't really think that you're going to roll the edge on S90V, particularly not on a friggin' zip tie. However, this does feel a little bit less capable, I'd say, than something like this, where I wouldn't feel that almost any cutting task is beyond this particular knife. Whereas this one, it has just a little bit more of a delicate feel to it. And I think there's something to be said for that. It kind of feels a little, I don't know, I kind of want to say it feels a little bit more higher end because of the delicateness that it seems to portray. But that really doesn't make any sense. You know, a lot of times we'll equate things, we'll equate quality to heft or to certain attributes that don't really make any sense in that comparison. So I don't know, sometimes when you handle something that's a little bit delicate, you kind of feel like, oh, I've got to be super careful. This is expensive. This is high end. Let me do that weight comparison here. So here we have 2.1 ounces, the Vampire 2.7. That is actually pretty significant on knives that are this small. Again, 2.1, Cyborg is 2.4. Big Bro is 2.6. So yeah, there is going to be quite a bit of a difference in the weight because of how sleek, slender, and slim this knife is overall. So if you don't want your pockets, you don't want to feel burdened down by all the things in your pockets, but you do always want to have a slip joint with you. I've turned into that person myself where I always, every single day, no matter what, whether I'm carrying a folder or I'm carrying a fixed blade or a folder and a fixed blade, I always have a Jack Wolf in my pocket. I always have a slip joint with me now at all times. And if you're that type of person now as well, then, the lighter the better for a lot of these summer days that are coming up. So this is gonna do you a lot of good in that respect. I like the fact that it's got a little bit of a lighter pull. And that could simply just be because of the length of the blade away from that pivot point, away from that friction area. It may just feel a little bit easier to open. I'm not entirely certain how the geometry of the knife affects the weight of the pull, but it does feel a little bit lighter. Is it a night and day difference? No. I think the only one that really feels stubborn to me is probably the low drag is a little bit stubborn sometimes. But this one, it's really nice, and it's very easy to pinch. And that could be the other thing, and I think I mentioned that in the unboxing video, is that could just be my mind playing tricks on me. Because it's so much easier, there's more blade to grasp. It may feel to me that it's easier to open, that it has a little bit lighter of a pull. It may not actually be a lighter pull, but it's important to note. Anyway, them's my thoughts. Ben has another winner on his hands. I love the overall look of this, and he's got some really awesome variations available. And listen, I'm not the kind of guy that ever buys pink stuff, but he's got this bazooka bubblegum pink fat carbon option that looks really, really awesome. And in my estimation, that's probably the one that's going to sell out first. He's got this lime yellow color that's pretty awesome. There are some really, really great choices visually all the way around on this drop. So it might be a little bit hard for you to choose only one, but I would do it very, very quickly because these are not going to last long. Anyway, them's my thoughts. Thank you guys for joining me as always, and I'll see you on the next video.